When I was in elementary school, I had met a girl who lived down the street from my grandparents' house. Let's call her Ashley. Whenever I went to my grandparents' place, I always felt a bit lonely because I didn't know anyone my age out there, so I had taken it upon myself to introduce myself. Ashley and I quickly became really good friends. In grade 9, I had introduced her to one of my best friends from school. Let's call her Morgan. It became the three of us: Ashley, Morgan, and me. Ashley had an older brother named Paul who was about 19 to 20 years old at the time, while I was only 14. Whenever Morgan and I went over to Ashley's house, Paul would always take it upon himself to talk to us, even though I know he and his sister never got along and would avoid each other for the most part. He started to text me, and he would ask me when the next time I was going to come over was. I didn't think much of it at the time. I knew someone his age shouldn't have been so friendly with someone my age, but I was happy to have the attention from an older guy. A few times when Morgan and I went over to Ashley's house, Paul would try to get us to drink alcohol and tell us to get drunk with him. I wasn't particularly comfortable with that, so I never drank enough to get drunk, but Morgan did. Paul would then try to pull Morgan and I onto his lap sometimes. I wasn't really comfortable with it, but Morgan did it, and I didn't want to be a downer on things, so I would go along with it. One day, Ashley invited me over for Thanksgiving dinner. I started the day out perfectly fine. I wasn't feeling sick and was fairly energetic, but then I started to get a headache. Headaches weren't very uncommon for me since I always get them around seasonal changes, so nothing seemed overly suspicious yet. I had asked Ashley's parents for some Advil, and they gave it to me. Usually, Advil always worked, and the headache would be gone in a number of minutes. But this time, it didn't go away, and instead grew into a migraine. I started to feel really tired, and I was losing my coordination, so I decided to excuse myself and went up to Ashley's bedroom to lay down and take a nap, hoping that would help. I closed my eyes, and I started to fall asleep, but I wasn't fully asleep yet. The door had opened, and I had opened my eyes slightly to see who it was. It was Paul. Paul walked into the bedroom and sat right next to me on the bed. He then placed his hand over my body. I had thought this was kind of weird, so I asked him what he was doing there. He said, "Oh, I thought you were sleeping. I just came to check in on you." I responded with, "I'm trying to sleep." Even though I was able to make those words out, it was still very hard, and it came off more as a mumble. Paul asked me, "Do you want me to leave you alone?" And all I could manage to make out was a Paul left the bedroom, and I finally fell asleep. I didn't think much of what happened, as Paul had always been a bit more friendly than normal, so him coming into the bedroom, even though it seemed weird, didn't seem out of character. I had forgotten what had happened for a while, not really considering what had happened, until a number of years later, I learned about the symptoms of flunitrazepam, also known as the date rape drug. For years, I thought it had only immobilized the victim, but I was still mobile. I had thought that the victim wouldn't remember what had gone on while they were on it, but I remembered. I had learned that it doesn't do only that stuff. The victim can have difficulty talking, nausea, difficulty with vision, dizziness, confusion, headaches, and even unconsciousness. I don't know if what happened to me was really that, but I do know that I had every one of those symptoms. And I know that Paul walked into the room I was trying to sleep in and was surprised when I was still awake. For years, I had just pushed that memory aside and didn't think much of it. But looking back at it now, all the signs point towards me being unknowingly drugged. And even though nothing had happened those moments that Paul did walk into the room while I was awake, it frightens me to think that something may have happened while I was unconscious. And it frightens me to think that after years of not ever thinking I was a victim of something like that I could have been. But what bothers me the most is that I don't actually know, and I'm uncertain about whether or not it happened. It could have simply been a matter of circumstances with my friend's older brother who was being inappropriate, or it could be exactly what I think it is. I have never told anyone about what I think happened, and I'm not too sure if I ever will. half because saying it out loud to people will make it more real, and half because I'm scared to hear people tell me it was probably nothing. I'm sharing this story because I want people to be aware of the symptoms within themselves so they can get themselves in a safer position before the drugs take its full effect. Let your friends know, call a family member, tell a bartender or security guard at the bar. Tell someone who can watch out for you.